I'm Garrett Ryan, and this is the short answer. Today's question is, were the wealthiest Romans as rich as modern billionaires? This is a Sestertius. In early imperial Roman Italy, one Sestertius could buy 2 loaves of bread, 4 cups of cheap wine, or 1 cup of good wine. Most Roman laborers made between 500 and 1,000 Sestertii each year. 1st and 2nd century soldiers earned 1,200 a year, which put them on the income level of a skilled craftsman. Imperial Roman senators were required to own property worth at least 1 million Sestertii, and most were considerably wealthier. Cicero, who was worth something like 13 million Sestertii, was probably about average. The famously wealthy Crassus was worth 200 million. Later, we know of 2 Romans worth 400 million Sestertii. The wealth of the emperors, who personally owned the entire province of Egypt and hundreds of massive estates throughout the empire, was in a league of its own. Over the course of his 13-year reign, for example, Nero reportedly spent more than 2 billion Sestertii on gifts alone. National GDPs are the only modern comparisons for imperial wealth. But what about the emperor's subjects? Were the wealthiest Romans in private life as rich as modern billionaires? That question is harder to answer than you might think. Attempts to convert Roman Sestertii to modern dollars often take one of 2 approaches. The older approach was to compare ancient and modern currencies by bullion value, by their value, that is, in terms of gold or silver. During the mid-imperial era, the highest value Roman coin, the aureus, contained 7.3 grams of gold. Since there were 100 Sestertii in an aureus, a Sestertius of that era was worth the equivalent of 0.073 grams of gold. At today's gold prices, that works out to about $4.50. The bullion method of comparing ancient and modern currencies made some sense in the era of the international gold standard, when the value of the dollar and other major currencies was, like the Roman currency, tethered to the value of precious metal. But today, the values of gold and silver fluctuate freely and independently both of one another and of the dollar. As recently as 2002, for example, gold cost only $300 an ounce, which would give the Sestertius a value of only $1. For this reason, and for a more fundamental reason we'll discuss in a moment, comparisons by bullion value are not helpful. A seemingly more promising method is to compare ancient and modern prices for equivalent goods. A loaf of bread, for example, cost about half a Sestertius in early imperial Italy. The average cost of a loaf of bread today is about $1.50. By this equivalence, a Sestertius had the purchasing power of about $3. But of course, it's not that simple. If we try the same equation with another good, we get a very different ratio. Take the example of wheat. The average price of a modius of wheat in early imperial Italy was around 8 Sestertii. Since a modius was equivalent to a modern peck, and since a peck of wheat is now normally worth about $1.25, this standard of comparison gives us a Sestertius with the purchasing power of only 15 cents. The problem is that we aren't really comparing equivalent goods. Ancient bread and modern bread, to return to our initial example, are fundamentally different. The bread produced by the pre-industrial, shortage-prone Roman Empire, where food consumed a huge part of most families' budgets, has almost nothing to do with the cheap and abundant bread of a wealthy industrial nation integrated into a capitalist global market. The economy and society of the ancient and modern worlds, in short, were so dissimilar that any attempt to convert their currencies is an exercise in futility. So we can't just convert Sestertii to dollars. But we can determine relative wealth, how much richer a Roman was than his contemporaries. And by that metric, we can compare ancient magnates, and modern billionaires. A mid-imperial Roman legionary, as mentioned earlier, earned 1,200 sestertii each year. Taking this as an average income, we can say that the fortunes of the wealthiest non-imperial Romans were about the size of 330,000 average incomes. Turning to modern America, let's take $50,000 as an average income. The wealthiest American is Jeff Bezos, currently worth a whopping $186 billion. The fortune of Jeff Bezos is thus equivalent to 3,720,000 average incomes. So, relatively speaking, Jeff Bezos is something like 10 times wealthier than the richest known Romans. The short answer, then, seems to be the wealthiest Romans were as rich as modern billionaires, but not as rich as Jeff Bezos. I talk about today's question in much more detail in my forthcoming book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants, Frequently Asked Questions about the Ancient Greeks and Romans. If you have a question about the Greeks or Romans that you'd like to have answered in a few minutes, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, stay tuned for my longer videos, which publish on Fridays. And, as always, thanks for watching.